Good morning, everyone. Smart business people take time out of their business to learn and grow. And so I want to thank you for all doing that today to learn and grow and go back into your businesses to be more successful. A special thanks to Business Day TV for hosting us here today. I'm going to be talking about scaling up businesses. And when we talk about scaling up a business, I'm looking at taking a business doing somewhere in the region of 30 to 50 million rand in turnover and growing it rapidly to be doing several hundred million or possibly even billion rands in turnover. And one of the keys to that success is that the founder and the management team of that business continue to learn. So they gather the skills that they need to make that transition in their business. So Business Day TV doing a great job in helping businesses and the country in sharing and allowing people to gain that knowledge. So thank you. I want to start by putting up a slide here that shows a growth curve that businesses typically go through from startup until they are a large and mature business. And what I'd like to do today is just take you briefly through the curve and then spend some time here. What are the key things that you need to do once the business is successful to rapidly grow it in what we call scaling up the business? Now, this business growth curve is based on studies and research by Harvard Business School. And so a business starts here in the existence phase. That's the startup of a business. It typically needs some cash to get going. And at this stage, it has to prove that its product or service is viable and that they can find customers to establish the business. If the founder can do that, the business now moves to the survival stage. And at the survival stage, the product or service has been proved, but the business is short of cash to grow aggressively. And typically at this stage, the business hasn't made a return on the original investment and certainly isn't making much of a return on the owner's time. But if the owner continues to be successful, he moves into this stage of the business. And that's what we call success. And this is a great place for a business to be because the business now has a good established base of customers. Often it's established itself as a niche in the marketplace and it's starting to produce really good profits. So we see businesses at this stage in their growth making 5 million, sometimes up to 10 million a year in profit. And so it's a great place for the business owner to be. But it's at this point he has a critical decision that he needs to make. One is to partly disengage from the business and enjoy the success that this business is providing to the business owner. And that means, possibly buying the holiday home and the fast car. And that's what we would call here a lifestyle business. And a business can be successful and remain in this place for an indefinite period of time. But then there are other business owners that want to grow a much, much bigger business and grow that business quickly. And if they want to get into this phase here of growing and taking their business to really big levels, there's two critical things that they've got to consider before doing that. The first one is, are they prepared to take the risk? Because they're going to have to take these profits that this business is generating and invest them back in the growth, possibly borrowing or raising additional funding as well. And the second thing they need to consider before making that transition is that the management of the business is fundamentally going to change. And are they prepared to make that transition to a completely different kind of business? And I'll come back and talk a little bit about that later. Just as a side note, a lot of businesses today start out as these high-tech companies. And so they have a slightly different passage in that they start out with a big idea and they raise a lot of capital up front. And so they start out at and move very quickly through the existence phase, but they still have to prove the validity of their product or service in order to get to the success stage. And once they reach that success stage, the challenges that they face in scaling up are similar to a business that maybe has grown through a more traditional model. So let's look at what are some of the things that you need to get right here at this takeoff stage. And so the first one, and we've already started touching on it, is about the founder and the entrepreneur. And so the founder and the entrepreneur needs to, first of all, have that vision to scale a big business. Attached to that vision, it's very critical that he has a strong reason or purpose or why as to why he wants to do that. That drives the need to grow the business. And so when we worked with the Absolute Aviation Group as a general aviation company, so they sell private jets, maintain them and manage them, and we helped them scale up to a very, very large business today, the founder had a strong purpose. The general aviation industry is characterized by a lot of unscrupulous operators and poor customer service, and he had a real passion to change that in the industry, which fueled the desire to take what was a successful business and grow it further. The second thing about the entrepreneur that is very critical is his ability to recognize what is his strengths or her strengths and weaknesses at this point. And this can be very challenging because an entrepreneur often has a very strong belief and high confidence which allowed them to go out and start a business in the first place. That's now being reinforced by the success that the business has had. But at this point, the founder has to be very realistic about their strengths and weaknesses. The strengths that allow you to build a business to the success stage are very much operating skills. The ability to go out, create a product and service, find customers, and make sure you deliver that product to them changes now to one of management. The ability to find the right people, delegate to them, and build a management team. And so owner needs to be able to recognize, does he have the skills to do that? And whether he perhaps can learn the skills if he doesn't, or maybe the decision is to get someone else in to take the growth of the business further. The next critical part to get right in scaling that business is having the right people on the team. Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, says companies that built really great businesses always started by getting the right people on the team. And the same is applicable for a business wanting to scale up. And so to do this, you have to always be looking for talent. It must be your number one job, you and your management team. Whenever you meet someone, you've got to be asking questions and finding out if they're the right people. And then you need to be making a note of that and getting their contact details, staying in touch. So when the time arrives that you need the skills as your business is growing, you already have what we call a virtual bench to go and call from. Now, the most extreme case I've seen of always looking for talent is an entrepreneur that I was talking to the other day who's built an incredibly successful business through the scale-up process, was telling me about his business development director and what success he's having with him. But then he told me where he'd met him. And he told me he'd met him in the sauna in the gym, which I was a little taken aback, not thinking that would be a place to go looking for future employees. But I think it illustrates the point of always be looking for good people. The next aspect of building a team is to recognize this transition in the management of the business. And this was very well articulated by a co-founder of a business that I was having a coaching session with last week. Now, they've scaled an incredible business. In 5 years, they've grown this business to 120 million rand in turnover. And this co-founder on our coaching call was sharing his anxiety with me. And he is the brains behind the technical side of the product that has made it so successful and so in demand in the marketplace. And his co-founder and the management team have said, to him, look, you've got to move yourself out of the day-to-day operations of the business, and you need to focus on your role as the CTO to keep this technology moving forward with the business. And so he has this great anxiety, and this is what he was sharing with me, that how will the standards be kept? If he's not interfacing with the customer and ensuring that the product and service is being delivered to his standards, and he was very, very concerned about this. And so the solution to this is that you've got to set what the standard is and clearly define what is the standard to deliver the product and service. Make sure that the right people have been hired and the processes and systems in place. But one of the most important things for him to do is to measure, to put a measurement in place so he can know whether the product or service has been delivered to the correct standard. And that allows him to free himself up to focus on his role of continually to keep the company at the forefront of its industry. And so that transition is very difficult often for entrepreneurs to make. The next area I want to talk about in terms of scaling a business is about strategy. And so to grow a business, you've got to have the right strategy. And on the board is a definition of strategy from Michael Porter. And in it he says, strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position by performing different activities from the competitors or performing similar activities in different ways. And so what does that mean? It means if you want to scale a business, you need something that is unique and valuable that has a market with sufficient demand of it. Now, often that creation of the unique and valuable thing has happened at the success phase. So the business has found that gap in the market, but if it hasn't yet reached that, you've got to create that unique and valuable offering. Then Michael Porter goes on to say, by performing different activities from the competitor or performing similar activities in a different way. And what does that mean? It means that you need to have a set of activities behind that unique and valuable proposition that are difficult to copy. So it's very difficult for your competitors to copy your uniqueness. But here and again in the scale-up process is a difficult transition for the founders of the business to make. That transition is in that early stage of the business, it's about creating the unique and valuable proposition, something that entrepreneurs love doing. But at the point of scale-up, it changes. Because now what you need to be doing is high attention to detail, systems and processes that allow you to deliver that unique and value proposition at scale. And again, that's challenging for the entrepreneur because he's always wanting to tinker with the product and refine it, where what's needed now is how do we deliver it at scale. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on sales and marketing because we've got a lot of good speakers coming later on today to talk about this topic, but just to emphasize the point that if you're going to scale a business, you must have a strong sales and marketing engine already in place that you know can generate predictable leads, and you have a sales system that will work to close them. Because what we've often seen with businesses where there's a desire to scale the business is they put in all the infrastructure and the capacity to grow the business, but then there's no sales coming in. And so what they're left with is a lot of costs and no additional sales. So if you're going to scale a business, you absolutely must know how your marketing engine is going to support that growth. And then the final concept I'd like to share with you today is cash. Growing and scaling a business requires a lot of cash to do that. And one of the areas that we're seeing being neglected in businesses that are scaling up is the financial management of those businesses. So businesses, at the point of success, 30 to 50 million rand businesses often have a very good accounting function. So, they're recording all the transactions, they're producing management accounts, but the challenge is that as the business grows, it needs far more financial analysis and understanding as to, what aspects of the business are making profit or loss, how will the cost structure of this business change as the business grows, and what will the demand be on the cash flows. And so the financial abilities to do that analysis and project it are often lacking in businesses when they scale. And we find this often catches people out because the focus on scaling a business is always on how do we find more customers, how do we manage the operations, and the finance function is often playing catch up. So don't get caught out in your scale up of your business by not having that financial insight in your business. So just in summary as to what I covered with you today is scaling up a business starts once it's reached a level of success. It starts with you, the founder of the business, making some important decisions about wanting to scale up and being prepared to learn and grow to do that. Then it's about finding the right people. It's about a transition in the type of management your business is going to experience. And then once you've done that, we need to look at strategy, marketing, and finances. And in closing, often the principles of scaling up a business are simple, but they're not always easy to apply. And so if you want to talk a little bit more about what we do, ask us some questions. Please find us. We've got a stand out the back. We're happy to talk about where you are in that growth cycle and what perhaps some of your steps need to be going forward. Thank you for your time today.